Well, good morning, everybody. We are ready to get rolling here today. We're right at the top of the hour. We appreciate your being here. Boy, the response to this webinar has been absolutely overwhelming. Last Saturday I sent out, or Friday rather, I sent out an email to everybody, basically that the SBA had issued a new application for the PPP program, which we'll be getting into a little bit here today. And since then, what ended up happening is our phones and our emails here absolutely blew up. Paul Sove, our operations director, and myself were on the phone constantly throughout the day. We're replying to emails while we're talking to other contractors, and that continued through the weekend and through Monday and yesterday, and even as of this morning. So that's why I decided that, again, there's so much confusion with these programs that I wanted to answer some of those in a little bit more of a formal format. So that's why I put this together. Now we're running into a couple little technical issues here this morning. So again, some of the slides that I've got here a little bit grainy, but we'll kind of work through those things. It's not a major problem. So a lot of information that we've got in here. Now, one of the reasons, again, why we're doing this, and I hear this as we've talked to contractors over the last couple of weeks, is that, again, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of confusion on the part of a lot of company owners across the country. And because, again, we're not quite sure what's happening. Right. One of the, friend of mine, said recently, and I thought it was a great analogy is again, it's dark, right? And it's not necessarily being afraid of the dark. It's being afraid of not knowing what's in the dark. Well, again, want to shine just a little bit of light into that a little bit. For many of you, your businesses have completely stopped. Right. I've talked to a number of contractors that they have literally closed their doors until this thing is over. And they're just kind of trying to weather it out at this point. There's others who are struggling, right? We're still there, but we're struggling mightily. And I talked to somebody just as recent as an hour ago who said, actually, our business is actually up from where it was. And so there's a wide array of companies out there, and that is out there. And our goal, one of the things, why are we doing this, is we want to come out of this thing stronger than ever. Right. We know that there's going to be some issues as we go through this thing, right? It's tough to get through, but if we do things right now, we could possibly, you and I, come out of this thing stronger than where we went into it. And so we want to be looking at some of those elements, some of those items that are in there. And on top of that, Jay Owen, Design Extensions, had made this statement in a podcast that he did recently, right? All this government stuff is already confusing. And that's in light of an already overwhelming season that we're in with this whole coronavirus thing, right? And I truly believe, again, you deserve a clear next step. What is that thing that we should do next? And so that's really our goal. Now, as we get into this, I want to throw in the disclaimer here a little bit, right? What am I not? Right? I am not a banker. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. That's not what I do, right? I'm not a government employee. So why am I doing this? Well, who am I? Quite honestly, I'm a business owner, small business owner, just like you, with the same problems and the same concerns. There's days that I wake up and I go into my new temporary office and I'm excited about where we are. And, and I love the charge. For some of us as leaders, we like this challenge. I mean, we don't like the situation that we're in, but what are the opportunities that are presenting themselves right now in front of us, right? And so that's one of those issues that are there. We certainly are dealing with that one. But there's other days I get up and I go into that office and I'm scared, right? I mean, that fear of the unknown is sometimes there. And so, I'm approaching you at this point. I'm another business owner just like you, and I want to help. Right. So one of my goals that I see right now is what can I do to help you in the middle of this entire situation? So that's kind of where we're approaching it from. So who am I? I'm Bill Kennard with Grandy and Associates. Again, 35 years in the trades industry, specifically HVAC, 15-year business owner. Have been working with and having some ownership in Grandy Associates for a chunk of time here. So that's really where I'm coming from. We work with many of your companies, and we appreciate your kind of putting your trust in us here a little bit. So there are a lot of different programs out there right now. When we talk about this confusion and everything that's there, Right. There's so many programs that are out there. Again, you've got the economic injury disaster loan. Right, we're going to spend time on that one. The payroll protection program. Those are really the programs we're going to talk about. We're not going to get into things like the bridge loans and the debt relief and some of that stuff. We're going to talk really about those first two programs. That's where our focus is going to be today. So with that, let's first start talking about that first program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, or some of you know it as the EIDL program, right? Acronyms kind of rule the world here, right? So the EIDL, or Economic Injury Relief Program, for many of you, you know that program as the $10,000 grant program, right? So let's talk about that one a little bit. So first off, this program, again, Economic Injury Disaster Relief Program, it was really put in place with regards to the coronavirus issue with that second phase of the stimulus package, the second rollout, if you will, of that program. And again, referred to as the EIDL program. That's really what it's the acronym that it goes by. And really, this is targeted for companies that are fewer than 500 employees, and it includes sole proprietors, contractors, ESOPs, 501c3 nonprofits that are included inside there, tribal businesses. One of the things that's really interesting about this program versus any other SBA type of program that they've done in the past is they've really taken a lot of the constraints off of this program. They've removed a lot of those confinements that are there. And so it applies to people and companies that it would not normally apply to in past disasters that they've dealt with. It provides a loan up to $2 million, right? So you can apply for a loan for up to $2 million through this program. And the goal is to help you weather this storm until operations go back to normal, if you would. It's a loan that's there for at 3.75%, and you can spread it up to 30 years. Now, this item can be used for any fixed debts that you have, for payroll and payroll-related benefits, for accounting, accounts payable rather, for other expenses that can't be paid because of the impact on your company as a result of the coronavirus. Right, that's the reason for this program. Now, this next bullet point here is really the element that we all know it for, and that's that emergency grant up to $10,000. Now, again, you see my little sub note there that the EIDL, that grant may be eligible to be refinanced into the PPP loan. We'll talk about that. I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself on that one. Now, one of the things with this one is, again, when you apply for this, you can get an immediate $10,000 grant that is forgivable. Right? The rest of it will be a loan at 3.75%. And the goal is to help you weather this storm. Now, these two programs, the EIDL and the Payroll Protection Program that we're going to cover next, kind of work a little bit hand in hand, or they absolutely can, right, as we look at those. So a couple of the requirements on the EIDL or items that apply with it, right? The first one is they've waived all personal guarantees or loans or on loans that are $200,000 or less. Now, again, personal guarantee, again, if you're not familiar with that, is you're basically signing off that, if I'm going to give a personal guarantee, that if my business goes under, that I personally am going to stand behind this thing, right? So it, in effect, puts my personal property at risk at that point as well. The SBA has never gone outside of that umbrella. With this program, with the EIDL for the coronavirus, again, it does waive that requirement as long as that loan is under $200,000. With this program, you would apply direct with the SBA, right? So not with a loan. You're not going to go through a bank. On that one, you go directly to the SBA's website, and I'll give you that link here in just a moment, and you apply there. Now, you can apply for whatever you want, right? It doesn't have to be more than the $10,000. They will give you that grant immediately, and you can take that, and it doesn't have to be paid back even if you don't take any more dollars, right? It's almost like they're giving you that money. Not almost like, they are giving you that money. It's a part of that stimulus program to try and keep businesses rolling, right? The entire intent of this program is basically giving yourself working capital that you need until the resumption of normal activities, whatever that normal looks like. Right. And again, that's one of those things you hear all the time today on media and that stuff, our new normal. This is not our new normal. Let's be very clear about that. this is a temporary normal. The new normal will be coming back after this, right? When things kind of get back, there's always going to be a little bit of a shift as a result of something like this, but it's kind of going to get back to where we were in the past. And so, again, don't get caught up on that piece of the puzzle that the media keeps pushing at us. This is not our new normal, right? Now, here's the thing. You can take out this loan. You can apply for this loan. You can get the $10,000 grant, and you can, there's no payment. The payments for this are deferred for 6 months. Right now, some companies are looking at this and going, well, but I don't need any more money, right? I followed the Dave Ramsey thing, right? I don't have any debt. We built up a Hill and Valley account, as we've been talking about here, right? So we're sitting good right now. But here's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen down the road, right? Dealt with a company yesterday that they're actually in the manufacturing side, the construction side of the coin. And in their particular case, what they're doing is right now, there's been zero impact on their company because they're into all these major contracts, building these large machines. And as they're, so their business is still rolling. But what's going to happen is in 6 months, their business will probably grind to a halt because there's no more new proposals or anything going out the door right now. And so 6 months from now, it's going to be an issue. So you can take out this loan today and put that money in the bank and hang on to it. Payments are deferred for 6 months. And so if in 6 months, it looks like everything's going to be okay, you can turn around and pay that all back at that point in time. And again, it's a 3.75% interest loan. So it's a relatively low interest rate for this type of a need. Now, the application process for the EIDL is actually very simple. Right, you're going to apply directly with the SBA, and you're going to go to this website, right? So it's COVID-19relief.sba.gov. Now, here's the thing. Anytime we get into situations like this, like we are right now, scammers go absolutely nuts, right? There's always somebody who's looking to prey on the people who aren't quite aware of watching, right, and are a little bit vulnerable. Well, quite frankly, again, make sure, right, that SBA.gov is an important piece of the puzzle. Anybody else, don't go to any other site, right? That's where I'm going to be looking at this point for applying for this information. So COVID-19relief.sba.gov. The entire application process will take about 10 to 15 minutes. It's a pretty simple application for what we're doing here. Now, theoretically, right, the way it's written is that once you apply and you can check the box that says, yes, I want the $10,000 grant, right, they say, right, it's still written there, that in 3 days you'll get the grant, and then they're going to go through and process your application for the loan. Well, first off, that's not happening, right? I've talked to a number of contractors that have applied for this a while ago. They're still waiting a week and a half. They haven't seen or heard anything at this point in time. So again, that grant thing still isn't happening. We'll see what's there. That's a little bit of it's a challenge because of this, right? The SBA was not designed to move at the speed of this program. A program like this, whether it be the EIDL program or whether it be the Payroll Protection Program, would have ordinarily probably taken a year for them to design. And all this stuff came together in a matter of weeks. So are there hurdles? Yes, there are, right? And they're not equipped necessarily to handle this, handle all of this. Now, with that, the other thing, so again, we have to kind of be patient there on that one. It's not quite coming through. Second thing is, again, they're going to ask for your bank information for the deposit because those funds will be deposited right into your account. You probably don't need to get too nervous about that. They probably already have much of that information, whether it be from taxes or whatever else that we've dealt with in the past. So, but that is going to be a requirement on that program. So again, that URL that you go to, COVID-19relief.sba.gov. I'll also say this, just the general website, SBA.gov, is a great resource. They've got a whole bunch of information out there for that program as it stands right now. So just to, and let me back up just a moment, right? I'm going to see, again, we got a couple of technical little issues here, but I'm just going to go out to that website real quick, right? And I'm just going to go to COVID-19.sba.gov. And again, my screen size, that's our technical issue that we've got. So it loaded up. It takes you right to the application for the EIDL program, right? You're not going anyplace else. It takes you right to that particular point. As I come down in here, there's a couple of quick steps, right? You can see the actual steps right here at the top of the screen, right? Some disclosures. They're going to look for some business information, the information about the owner of the business, and then a little bit of background information. Again, 10 to 15 minutes is really all you're looking at here. If I come down a little bit, again, I can't really move that over too much, but you can see you're just selecting a couple of these items, right? And so the applicant is a business with not more than 500 business, right? 500 people. You notice the second one here. Again, here's the item. The applicant is an individual who operates under a sole proprietorship with or without employees or an independent contractor. So again, as a sole proprietor, you still qualify. As an independent contractor, you still qualify for these programs. Right, so you can still go out there and apply for the EIDL program. You can take advantage of that one today. Payroll protection that we'll talk about next, you got to wait another couple of days on that one. But for this one, you can take advantage of it today. Then when you go down a little bit farther, again, it's going to just get a little bit more information about your company. And you check the box that applies, go ahead and get continue, and you're pretty much ready to go at that point in time, right? So you just step through, follow the directions. It'll take you about 10 to 15 minutes to walk through that entire program, the entire application for this one. Now, here's the other thing. Again, if you check the box that, yes, I want the $10,000 grant, right, that will be processed sooner. That'll be processed relatively quick. And then after that, they'll go back and review your actual loan application. And they may or may not grant that. Even if they grant it and approve it, you don't have to take it. And in either case, whether they approve it or not, you do not have to pay back the $10,000 grant. Right? So that's a huge plus, right? That can very well help you, right? And if this is the only program you're looking at, then this is the program, then absolutely take advantage of that, right? There is a tie into the payroll protection that I'll talk about here in a couple of minutes, but absolutely take advantage of that piece of the puzzle. Next thing is as we're looking at this particular program, again, you can take those funds, put them in the bank and hang on to them a while because, again, I don't know what's going to happen down the road, right? So at least look at this as a possibility. It might help you out. From here, let's go to the next program, right? So what we've been talking about up until now has been the Payroll Protection Program. Right? Now, is the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Now we're going to move into the Payroll Protection Program, or known as the PPP program. This is the one I sent the email out on last Friday that really spurred on all of the phone calls. The Payroll Protection Program kicked in as a part of phase 3 of the stimulus package. This is the one that Donald Trump signed on March 27th. So again, think about this program, again, a program that would normally take a year to design, and this was basically put into place back 2 weeks ago. So again, there are absolutely some bumps in the road. I know listening, to the presidential briefing the day before yesterday, the president's saying, well, no, it's working fine. There's no issues with it. There are some bumps in the road, right? And so, again, we just need to at least be aware of those, and we're going to have a little bit of patience, and hopefully I can give you a little bit more guidance on this particular program. Incidentally, I should have mentioned at the beginning, so we have a boatload of people who responded to this thing. Right. In fact, Zoom meetings allows us to have with our account up to 100. I said there were 100 total possible spots. We actually had over 200 registrants for this program, and we checked before we went live today. We were already more than 100 on board. So whether they've either just removed all the barriers to the number of people in here, or the Lord has blessed us and just allowed the whole thing to be wide open. So again, we've got a number of those people in here. As you do, if you have questions, down, if you move your mouse on the screen, you'll see the menu pop up on the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A icon there. Feel free, if you have questions, to hit that Q&A icon, and you can type in questions to us. Right, we'll go through those as we have time at the end of our time together today, and I'll answer as many of those as I possibly can. The chat box that's there, that's more for technical stuff. But again, if you got questions, hit the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll run from that point in time. So feel free to go ahead and put those in at this point. Paul, are we all good right now? All right, so let's keep moving forward a little bit. So next item, let's dig into this Payroll Protection Program, or otherwise known as the PPP program. So this program is, number one, it's designed for small and medium-sized businesses that were in operation on or before February 15th of this year. Okay, the couple of caveats. Number one, fewer than 500 full or part-time employees. That's one of the other items that they put in there. Again, you know, and I hardly think of a 500 person company as a small company, but again, it's companies 500 people or less that make up 90% of the employment in the country. The whole idea of this particular program is basically to keep people getting paid. Right, that's the goal as we go through there, and so that's where this program kicks in at this point. So, Paul, we got a question or an issue? Just one moment.
Real common question: Will there be recording for this for people to do that?
Okay, so the question is, will there be a recording for this? We are recording the program because there's a lot of information in here. And so we are recording it. We will post it. In fact, we'll send a link to it for everybody who's in this webinar as well. We'll send you a link. We'll post it up on our YouTube channel and have it there as well. We were hoping to live stream it on Facebook and have it recorded there. Technical issues were getting in the way of that one. So we will have it on our YouTube channel. We will send you out that link. So appreciate that, Paul. Okay, so a couple of other things regarding the payroll protection. Small companies, fewer than 500 people. This third bullet point is a biggie, right? This includes sole proprietors, independent contractors, and eligible self-employed individuals, right? That's again, as a sole proprietor, as an independent contractor, you qualify for this program. You can apply. Now, the one caveat is the Payroll Protection Program kicked off last Friday. Okay, and the caveat is for the individual, independent contractors and self-employed individuals, the kickoff date for that one is this Friday, April 10th. Right, so starting this Friday, you can go ahead. If you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, you can apply at that point in time. And then again, it does also apply to 501c3s if you have somebody who knows that question. And so one of the questions that was emailed in when you registered, I said that if you had any questions, you can go ahead and send those in to me in advance. And one of those that came in was this one, is that do independent contractors, do they apply as our own people and count towards our employee count and toward our payroll amount? Right, and so two items on that. Number one, if you have people that are working that you're classifying as independent contractors, number one, separate note, make sure that they are truly independent contractors and not employees. Right, go back and review the definition of an independent contractor, because if they're truly not independent contractors, you could get yourself into a little bit of an issue there with audit and some back taxes. So just watch that one. The second note is that, again, since this program covers independent contractors and sole proprietors, they can go apply themselves. They do not count in your head count. They do not count in your the payroll calculations that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Right, that's separate. They would go apply for themselves and get their own funds to cover their own independent company. Okay, so hopefully that one clears up that question pretty well. Now, we have always said at Grandy and Associates, there are three critical relationships that you need to have and you need to foster and grow. And that's your attorney, your banker, and your CPA. Those three. Right now, and the reason why I said that is because sometime in the life of your company, you're going to need all three. This last week or so, man, let me tell you, I have leveraged that relationship with our CPA and our banker. Those guys have been off the charts helpful, right? Melissa, if you're out there from Catalyst Consulting, she's a rock star, right? My CPA was sending us updates and information almost daily for a week leading up to last Friday, as far as getting ready, being prepared, talking to the banker a week in advance as far as what do we need. Those guys, again, if you've got that relationship, this is the time to be using it. Get on the phone, be talking to them, because they can help you with some of this information. So the couple of other things. With the requirements is in the payroll protection. Again, the business just must have to have had paid salaries of some point, or pay, and paid payroll taxes, or in the case of an independent contractor, again, you've reported that income. And again, that's usually all 1099 type income that's been reported. As long as those things are there, you qualify for the program, right? So take advantage of it. And this one is a no-brainer. You need to be working for this, and don't waste your time. Now, the way the Payroll Protection Program works is that you first have to apply for a loan. Now, sometimes we get a little bit twitchy about and nervous about, I don't know if I want to apply for a loan with the SBA. Well, they call it a loan for a very specific reason. And that's because, again, much of this will be forgiven. But the reason they call it a loan is because you have to do some things, very specifically, you have to do some things in order to get it forgiven, right? And I'll walk through those. And if you don't do them, then it just reverts to a loan. So they've actually done that quite wisely, right? It requires that some actions be taken in order for it to be forgiven. If not, it's a loan. So you're applying for this. And again, they've pulled off pretty much all the restrictions in this program. They really have. And so what they've done is to calculate your loan amount, it's basically 2.5 times your monthly payroll from last year. Your average monthly payroll with a maximum of $10 million. So if your payroll's that big, you're a whole lot bigger company than we are. Now, the way that this works is, again, you're going to go back and look at your payroll for 2019 or for the last 12 months, right? Your bank might require one or the other, right? So get ready and have both, right? But simply run, what was your total payroll? And I'm going to define payroll here in a second for 2019. Right? Because some of you, it's not even every month, right? For most of us, it's not even every month, right? Some months are higher, some months are lower, right? We got more overtime, we got a little bit less overtime, right? So what was the total payroll that we paid out in 2019 divided by 12 to get our average monthly payroll? So let's say our total payroll was $350,000 divided by 12 months. Our average monthly payroll at that point is $29,166. Then we take that and multiply it by a factor of 2.5, right? So 29,166 times 2.5 multiplier, our loan amount that we're capable of taking is $72,915. Okay, so all this part does is this just simply defines how much you can apply for in this Payroll Protection Program, loan forgiveness program, whatever you want to call it. Right? So that's all we're doing is calculating how much are we eligible to take. So that's the first element, right? So the loan amount is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So let's define that payroll piece a little bit more. What is included in payroll? So payroll is included, it's all wages, tips, group health insurance that the company is paying. So if you don't have a group plan, but the company is just, as the owner, is paying your individual health insurance policy for you, that may not qualify. You probably want to be talking to your accountant or your bank on that particular piece of the puzzle, right? But if it's a group plan, it's the company portion of that group plan. All retirement benefits, all employer paid state and local taxes, not federal, not FICA, not Medicare. Right, that's not included in it. The federal government is saying, look, we're already giving you this whole pool of money, so we're going to filter out the taxes that you're paying there. But any state taxes, any that the company is paying, any local taxes that you might have to pay, that would all be considered payroll. Now, the one caveat that they put on payroll, is if you have high earning employees that are earning over $100,000. Right? They're going to cap it at $100,000 in income. Right? They don't exclude it. They just simply are only going to take into account the first $100,000. They figure if you're making over $100,000 a year, you can figure out the rest of it. Right? But you can still include the first $100,000 as payroll in your calculations. Right? So that's that's what they define as payroll. The other question that came up is, what about paid sick leave? Now, in fact, I have to send out a correction to somebody I sent an email on yesterday. So Cheryl, if you're here, standard paid sick leave is included in this calculation. But if you're doing the Extended Family Medical Leave Act, that is not included. Again, as a company, you're already getting a credit back on that part of it, and so they're not going to let you take a double dip on that piece of the puzzle. So that's the second piece that's there. Yeah, the other question that comes up is, well, wait a minute, I'm not a corporation, I'm not an LLC, right? I'm a non-seasonal business, but I just started, right? So I'm a contractor. I haven't been here for all of 2019. So how can how do I figure out that average monthly payroll? If you were not in business between February and June of 2019, then what they're going to do is they're basically going to go back and say, okay, what were your total payroll expenses for January and February of this year, and divide that by 2. Okay, so if you're a brand new business, that's how you would figure out your average monthly payroll. And if you are a seasonal business, again, we got a lot of different people, a lot of different company types on here. If you are a seasonal business, then what they're going to do is they will look at your payroll cost for a 12-week period, sometime between February 15th and March 1st. So in effect, you can pick the 12-week period that has the highest payroll for you and divide that by, so a 12-week period, divide that by 3 months. And that will come out with your average monthly payroll, right? So 3 different situations, 3 different types of company setups that you'll be looking at there. Quick question.
Yeah, Bill, we've got a number of questions, and I'm thinking it might be better to address them as we go through them as opposed to waiting to the end.
Sure, I'm good with that.
How long do you need to be in business in order to qualify for an EIDL program?
So EIDL, I believe, again, as long as you were in business, they're all pretty much driven off of that February 15th. As far as I'm aware, again, you're going to want to go back and double check the application process when you go to COVID-19 relief at .sba.gov. That website, that application that I talked about has a couple of qualifying. The very first page will tell you if you qualify or not.
Okay, a question from Nancy. If we have guys that are caught up during the day on their work, can I keep them on call until I get their 8-hour shift in is over?
Okay, so that's now getting into the Payroll Protection Program type of question. So can I keep the guys on staff? Here's the thing. For some of you, you don't have enough work, right? I just, a friend of mine is a plumbing contractor in Milwaukee. He's got 35 guys on staff. He had to lay off half of them. The goal of this program is to bring them back on staff and pay them even if they're sitting at home, right? Because here's the thing, if they're not working, they're not getting paid, they don't have money to keep making their house payment and keep paying their bills and doing all the stuff that they would do, which means they can't go out. So the ripple effect is tremendous, right? It's already huge in here. So the whole idea of this program is to keep the money flowing. So in effect, in this program, the government is going to pay your payroll costs for 8 weeks. And so take advantage of that, right? So I don't care if they have to sit at home, right? I've got a good friend that we have that owns a nail salon. They're shut down. So they have no work to do. They can't bring their guys in, their people in. So as a result, at that point, this program will maintain their payroll for the next 8 weeks, even though their employees can't come in and work even an hour. So that's the intent of the program. You don't have to keep them in the office. You can send them home and still pay them their normal 40-hour work week.
A question from Robert. Are there any risks applying to both the EIDL and the PPP?
So are there any risks in applying to both EIDL and the PPP program? There's no risks in applying to both of them. You can absolutely apply to both of them. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you how one will dovetail into the other. Because if you're receiving both of them, there will be, in fact, there could be a benefit if you apply to both, right? Because this payroll protection program is only going to give you 2.5 times your average month's salary. So think about that. What you're going to earn or get from the program is 2.5 months worth of payroll, right? That's what you're going to get out of this program. The other one, you could get substantially more money to keep your business going, and that would be at a 3.75% interest rate. Now, you can roll dollars that came from the EIDL program over into the PPP program, which means the interest rate drops to 1% in this program. So that could actually be an advantage if you need more than that 2.5 months of payroll that this program allows. Okay? So hopefully that answers that one. What else do we got, Paul?
What is the 12-month period to figure out your payroll average from 2019 or the last 12 months up until March 1st?
All right, great question. What is that payroll period that we use? So here's one of the things, right? So we talked about that confusion a little bit earlier. And this is one of those areas that is a little bit confusing in that what's required. Well, you know, if you actually look at the SBA loan application, it's pretty brief, right? You're talking about a 5-minute application to fill out. There's not a lot that's there. And if you look at the detail, what it requires, they don't require a lot, but there is one line on there that says your banker has to basically verify the information that you're putting on there. And so what happens is some banks are going to say, we want you to use calendar 2019 for your payroll period, right? But, and in my case, for example, they wanted my payroll reports for 2019. Then they also wanted the payroll reports coming up to March 1st, right? So in most cases, print out both of them, right? Again, so that way you have the number there and it's correct, and you can answer the question with whatever they want. But again, where I would shift that, again, specifically, it states the payroll, the average monthly payroll for the 12 months leading up to March 1st. So that would be the number that I would use as I'm putting in the information in here. Okay, but you print both of them, have them ready to go.
2 more quick questions, then I think you'll be answering a lot of the questions as you go through your presentation. The first question, does it cover fringe benefits of union employees?
Does it cover fringe benefits of union employees? So it does talk about complete payroll costs that you have to your company. My assumption is that it does. But again, that would be a direct question for your accountant or your banker that I would ask them. I will also go back and I'll see if I can get an answer to that question, and I will send it out with the email that we have with the recording. If I can get an answer to that, I will, and I'll shoot that back out to everybody on that one.
And last question for now is what happens if employees are currently collecting unemployment?
Yeah, what happens if employees are currently collecting unemployment? So if they're already on unemployment, again, the whole idea here is that the government is saying, look, we'd rather pay them, right? Because they're paying them either way, right? And again, let's be honest, it's not the government paying them, it's you and me through taxes. But you know, the money is going to go out anyway. And they would rather pay the people through this program and keep them on your payroll, right? And so if you've already laid them off, then what I would do is I would bring them back for this program, right? And pay them throughout the 8 weeks. And here's the reason why. The mindset is that if they, you know, you lay them off and they file for unemployment, statistically, they know that a percentage of those people are not going to come back to you, right? And again, when this thing finally goes through, you need to get back to business. And so the goal is keep them on your payroll, keep them in your circle, if you will, right? So that way we ensure that they stay with us after the fact, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, again, the whole idea of this program is to keep them getting paid, because unemployment is going to be at a much lower rate, right? So this way we can give their full wages, still pay them for 8 weeks, because the other thing that happens is the longer this engine stops, the harder it is to get it rolling again, right? So we want to keep some of that money flowing. That's the reason why this program, the stimulus program, is even here to begin with, to kind of keep that program rolling along, keep the engine rolling. You know as well as I, if you're trying to push a car, right? If it's, you're trying to get it moving from a dead stop, it's a lot harder to get it moving, right? But if the tires are at least turning, right, and we at least keep them turning, then again, things are easier to get rolling afterwards. And that's the goal of this program. So here's what you want to do. At that point, again, once you're applying to this thing, go ahead and bring them back as soon as you can, right? And run them under the program. You have the requirements are that you just have to bring them back before June 1st. Okay. Now you can say, okay, well then I'll just I'll wait till, you know, May 30th and bring them back then. Here's the other point, is that the longer they're laid off, the less of your payroll protection loan will be forgiven, right? So we want to keep the full team fully employed during this 8-week period. So once your loan is approved, you want to have them on the payroll, right? So I'll talk about some of that forgiveness thing here in just a little bit. So hopefully that helps that question. Paul, are we good? All right, so let's move on a little bit farther here at this point. Now, where can I use these funds for? These funds are not just earmarked for payroll. You can use them for all payroll and related benefits. And again, I'll double check on that question on the union benefits there. So I'll double check on that. But payroll and all benefits. So that means vacation, retirement. Again, they can't necessarily take vacation, right? But any of those dollars that go into your normal payroll would be included in here, right? So that includes the state and local taxes that you had to pay. Any of that stuff, sick time, all of that stuff is in here. You can use it on any of that stuff. You can use it on interest on mortgage payments or other debts that were incurred prior to February 15th. If you took on debt after February 15th of this year, that doesn't qualify, right? But if you had a loan that you've been paying on for a period of time, you can actually, it can be used for the interest on that. Now, again, they're not going to make your mortgage payment, right? But again, you can pay the interest portion of that payment can be allocated to this. Right? We can use it to pay rent on your building. Somebody asked me just in the last couple of days, well, I don't have rent on my main building, but I have a storage unit where I keep all my supplies and stuff like that. Well, that's still rent. You can absolutely use it toward that and any utilities. Okay, so that's what it can be used on, right? Don't confuse the dollar amount, that 2.5 times multiplier, right? That's just establishing how much you can take. And then from there, we can use it on payroll and related benefits, interest on your mortgage and older debts, rent, and utilities. Those couple of items. Now, there is a caveat or two in there that I'm going to cover in a second, so stick with me on that one. The other nice thing about this is there is no collateral required, right? So you don't have to put up something to support this thing. So that's what it can be used for. Now let's talk about the forgiveness portion of this loan a little bit. Number one, you know what? I'm going to back up one step, right, before we get into the forgiveness part, because there's another question that came in. The first one is, when do I start, what 8-week period do I look at for that loan forgiveness? Well, the 8-week clock, right? So Donna, I know you asked this question. I think Bob asked the question. There's an 8-week clock that starts the day that your loan is originated. So the day that it's originated, you've signed it, the documents, and you've got the funds came into your account. That's the day that your 8 weeks start. All right, so that's the 8-week period you'll be looking at. Now, so hopefully that clarifies that little piece. Now, on the forgiveness part of it, here's what's going to be covered, is that they will basically forgive 8 weeks of payroll, rent, utilities, and interest expenses that start with your origination date. Right, so that will come in. Now, a couple of the caveats that go with that. Number one, you cannot reduce headcount, right? So you can't say, well, I'm going to lay off 2 or 3 people and we'll keep the rest of the team here, right? And basically keep paying them. If you do that, you have to pay your entire team. That's the entire function of this program, is to keep people getting paid, right? So that's the first one. It does allow you to reduce wages by up to 25%. You cannot go more than 25%, but also remember that any reduction in wages will result in a reduction of the amount that will be forgiven. That will be taken into your calculations. If you reduce wages from what you typically pay them, that will reduce the amount that they forgive on the loan. Now, you might basically come up and say that, okay, my amount that I can borrow is $100,000, just to pick a nice round, easy number. And then when you go back and you look at the actual payroll, rent, utilities, expenses, it only comes up to $90,000. Well, again, you can still take the full $100,000. They may only forgive $90,000. The other $10,000 will remain there as a loan at 1% interest. So again, you're not going to get money any cheaper than that. So take whatever you can get. Again, even if you're cash flush today, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. right? So it makes sense to take those funds at this point in time. So again, you can't reduce headcount, can't reduce wages by more than 25%. And again, remember, they're only going to take into account the amount that, if you've got employees that are making over $100,000, they're only going to look at the first 100,000, not only in your calculations, but also in the payroll numbers afterwards. And then again, forgiveness of non-payroll expenses is limited to 25% of the total forgiveness. So what I mean there is that, again, you have $100,000, they want you to use at least 75%, or in this case, $75,000 to go toward payroll. The majority of this program is to keep your people paid, right? So again, what they're going to look at is out of the total amount that we're looking to be forgiven, those other expenses, rent, utilities, interest, right? Those things can't exceed 25% of the total amount that's going to be forgiven. So they're going to look at what's your total payroll amount, right? And then basically work up to make sure that this doesn't exceed those limits from that point. So they're basically saying, look, you can't take a whole bunch of this and start putting it toward other expenses, right, within your company. They want the money to go to payroll. All right, so that's the clarification point on this one. So hopefully that helps. Now, the application process for this one is through your local bank. Okay, now this has been where there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of information on that one. Some of, I've had contractors say, well, I applied for this program 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. No, if you applied several weeks ago, that was the EIDL program. That was done with the SBA. Because this program didn't start until last Friday for corporations. For independent contractors and sole proprietors this coming Friday, right? So you're going to apply through your bank. Now, this is where it gets just a little bit mushy, right? So the application itself is not difficult, right? Again, so I sent out this updated application last Friday to everybody. Again, if you go out to sba.gov, again, the first banner that pops up is, coronavirus help. You can click on learn more and start to get information there. You can download these applications from there. A lot of your banks already have them. If you need a copy, shoot me an email. We'll send it to you, right? But they're very easy to fill out. I said 5 minutes. I'm not kidding, right? A couple of items on there at the top. We start out, what's your if you have a DBA name or a trade name, right? You'd fill that in here. Otherwise, just leave it blank. Your company's legal name, your business address, your EIN number, your phone number, and the contact information for your company. This line right here, then, that's really getting into the actual loan portion. So they're asking right here, what's your average monthly payroll? Right now, I'm going to show you a spreadsheet. Last Friday, I also sent out a spreadsheet that helped you calculate this average monthly payroll. It's a great tool. Again, if you need another copy, again, we'll include it in the attachment with the email we send out later this morning. So with that, what's your average monthly payroll is going to be here times 2.5, right? And this box here then is your loan amount. Now, you do see, and if you filled out an application prior to last Friday, there was the original application that was there didn't have some of this information in there. If you notice in the small print here, it's basically saying times 2.5 plus your EIDL net of the advance, right? So what they're saying, so somebody asked earlier, is there a problem with applying to both of them, right? If you got the $10,000 grant and the numbers on the EIDL side, then they want you to include that information in here. Because again, what's going to happen is if they've already given you the $10,000 grant, they're going to include that in the amount that will be forgiven on your payroll protection, right? So in other words, you're not going to be able to double dip, but the advantage might be any loan amount on the EIDL program at 3.75% could come over to this one if possible at a lower interest rate. So that's where that could help you. And then the last one here is how many employees do you have? Right now, a lot of the original information, that box actually asked for full-time equivalent employees. With this one, they just changed it to how many employees. So how many total full-time and part-times do you have? And then last, what are you going to use it for? I'm going to use it for payroll and lease or mortgage interest and utilities and old interest, whatever it is, right? So you can put those in. Who's the owners of the company? What's their percentages? You're going to fill that in. The questions, so let me scroll down here a little bit on this page. The bottom portion here, and I got to get my glasses, right? Because this is just a little bit small, right? But note these first two questions, right? See the note here? If you answer yes to questions 1 or 2, you don't qualify for the PPL loan, the PPP loan, right? Get my acronyms right. The first one is the applicant or any, the company itself, have they been excluded? Let me see. Okay, so are you currently going through a bankruptcy? If you are, and that process is already in place, then this won't apply to you. Second one, has the applicant or this business or anybody in there, and so this question has come up, not in the course of this one, but I've talked to people about this one, and it's basically this. Have you had an SBA loan that you defaulted on in the last 7 years? If it's been within the last 7 years, then again, they're not going to let you qualify in this one. If it's been over 7 years, you can answer no on that question and you're fine. The next couple of questions in here, it's just talking about the business itself. Question number 4, and basically, if it's there, the first one is, do you have, as the owner of the company, do you own other companies that are also applying for this? If so, they want you to basically, in attachment A, tell them about it. What's that detail? Question number 4 is basically, did you apply for the EIDL loan? If you answer yes, again, they just want you to give them the details. Not a problem with it. They're just going to take that into account. Then we go down a little bit farther. This next section here, again, if you answer yes to questions 5 or 6, then you don't qualify for this particular program. 5 basically says that, and again, this one has, I've talked to a few in this particular case as well. So if you were convicted, and I just want to double check here real quick because there's 2 different questions here, right? And I have to just read these. Okay, so one of them is getting into, again, are you charged at this point? Are you, their issues? So it gets into a little bit of background on you. The other one is, and again, I'm just having a tough time reading some of these items, but have you, so question 6 is the one that did come up, right? It says, you know what, I was convicted of a felony, but it was years ago, right? It was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Does that disqualify me? They're looking for basically, so read that question close because it first starts out within the last 5 years, right? If it hasn't been within the last 5 years, then you're clean, right? Don't worry about it. You can absolutely apply, right? And they're basically making you initial those 2 that you understand what you're saying on this one. So that's the application. The second page of it, there's just a number of statements that you have to read. Most of them are just, and you initial each one of those. It's pretty clean, and they're all pretty clear, and they don't make there's really no question about them. This last one is the one where that introduces some of the confusion, and it's basically you're acknowledging that your local bank is going to verify the information that you're giving them on this loan. Right, so that's why some banks require a little bit more information. Some make it really easy, right? And that comes down to your individual bank that you're dealing with at that point. Okay, are we good at this point, Paul?
You have a number of questions if you want to clear out some of those, or are you wait?
Tell you what, we're almost to the end. Let me cover one more step in the application. We'll hit those questions. We're coming down to the end here. I am paying attention to our time. So I'll hit those in just 1 second. Now, last Friday, and I referred to a couple of times today, I sent out a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet, your bank might use something like this. Here's the thing, if you're getting ready for this, go ahead and use this one. It will give them all the information that they need. I sent it out last Friday. I'll include it with the email again today. It does a nice job at helping you come up with some of your numbers. So there's 4 tabs on this one. The first tab is just information about your company, right? So again, employees, that's full-time, that's total employees, not full-time employees, right? So that's the first tab. Second tab, as I go along the bottom, you'll see there's tabs at the bottom. The second spreadsheet starts out and it's got 3 columns, right? Those 3 columns are, you're only going to use one of the 3. What type of business are you? Well, I'm non-seasonal, right? So for most of you, you're going to use this first column. For those of you who are new businesses, right? Businesses that were not in business in 2019, you're going to use the middle column. The far right is purely for seasonal businesses. When you scroll down, it's going to help you calculate exactly what is that loan amount that you can ask for. Okay. Next, going down a little bit farther, there is the section on the bottom. So for those of you who are sole proprietors and independent contractors, still on the same spreadsheet, it will help you come up with what is your loan amount. So the second tab is all about what is the loan amount that I can borrow. Okay. Third tab gets into the loan forgiveness calculator, right? So when I tap on the third tab, they're going to ask you basically transfer some of that payroll stuff that you just entered in on sheet 2. And then down farther, it will help you figure out how much of your loan will be forgiven. All right, so we have that information. And then the fourth tab that's there is just what kind of data are they going to need? Now, this is the piece where, again, where it can change just a little bit. So for the origination of this loan, this PPL loan, number one, here's the stuff. If you pull this stuff up, chances are you'll have most of what they need. So to validate what you've got, pull up your payroll tax reports that you filed with the IRS, the Form 940s, 941s, state income, unemployment taxes for 2019 and first quarter of 2020. You'll also want to pull up the payroll reports for each of the 12 or each of your payroll periods throughout the last 12 months. Again, so that's that piece that you're verifying that information. You're going to want to pull up documentation showing what the company portion of your group health insurance plan was. And again, that's for the preceding 12 months, for the last 12 months that you have. And again, invoices should suffice on that one in most cases. And then last, something that documents how much the company portion of the matching taxes were that the company paid. In our case, what we did is we pulled up in the payroll reports, it showed how much of that was company portion. And then we just actually went back and printed up, logged into our online bank account, found each of those checks that we sent to the retirement company and printed off copies of those checks. That's everything we needed. It justified all of that. So that's the loan origination side, right? That should be what you need. If you do the spreadsheet, the application, pull this stuff together, you should be in pretty good shape. They might ask you for something more, something less, but you'll be in good shape. Now, remember I said earlier, think about what you need for the forgiveness side. Right? So throughout there, at the end of the 8 weeks, you're going to have to prove to them what you spent that money on. And so what you'll need on the forgiveness side, so think about this as you're going through the 8 weeks, you'll need to basically come up with the payroll tax reports again, your 940s, 941s for the 8-week period following the loan origination. You'll also want to have the payroll reports for each period. You'll want to have documentation for the health insurance for that previous period, same things we provided for the justification for the loan. And again, any monies that you sent to the company, retirement plan contributions, you need those. But for the proof side of it, that handles the payroll piece. Remember, you can also use those funds for a couple of other items. So a copy of your lease in your building to show how much your rent is for each month, right? Copy of the statements for interest that you paid on debt that was incurred prior to February 15th, and copies of your canceled checks or statements showing what you paid for utilities. And again, today, in most any online account, you can go out there and actually print off a copy, right? Since you don't get the canceled checks back anymore, you can get the copies for that piece of the puzzle. And one final note on this thing, remember that this is a real benefit, right? Any amount that they forgive is not taxable. Typically, if a debt is discharged, then they see that as income and they'll tax you on that. Written specifically in this program, any debt that's forgiven through the Payroll Protection Program is not taxable. Second thing is anything that's not forgiven will convert over to a loan that takes effect at the end of the period at 1%. All right, so that's where that kicks in. So part of that means that's where, again, why you're applying for a loan, because it is a loan. If you don't give them the information justifying what you paid, then they're going to roll it over into a loan at 1%. Okay. So and this is really that last piece. And then we're going to get into those questions that are out there. Number one, just some numbers on this thing. As of Monday morning of this week, there was $38 billion approved through this Payroll Protection Program, right? That was up from $22 billion on Sunday. So think about that. In 24 hours, $16 billion was approved out of the 41 billion that's available. All right. So that's already, it's happening quick. If you're that real detailed C person, right, don't wait till you have every, I dotted and T crossed. Call your banker, call your CPA, get working with them now. The average bank has processed 41 loan applications as of Monday morning. Now, interesting part, talking to my banker, as of Monday afternoon, between two branches, they processed 140 loan applications under this program in 48 hours, right? So some are much higher, some are lower. Community banks are making up at this point the majority of the applications that are going through. They're a little smaller. They tend to be a little bit more agile. They're jumping on it a little bit quicker. Our bank, again, we're blessed to be working with somebody like that. They literally were up and ready at 12:01 a.m. Friday morning to start entering in applications for some of their clients. Right. So again, that piece of the puzzle makes a difference. Bank of America has received requests over the weekend for over $32 billion under this program. Right now, for those of you who are Bank of America customers, again, they took quite a social media beating on Friday and Saturday because they initially, and some of you experienced this, they initially, first off, they say, through this program, we don't want to actually talk to anybody, right? You have to go online and apply for it there. Second thing they did is when you went online, they said you had to have that banking relationship. And one of those elements was you had to have a credit card, right? I talked with a particular contractor who had their business accounts through Bank of America for 50 years, right? We're in great standing, but they were declined because they didn't have a credit card with Bank of America, right? Saturday a.m. at about 9 o'clock, they released those requirements. So again, if you work with Bank of America and you haven't already done so, you should be able to go back and apply. A couple of other items. On Sunday, Wells Fargo announced that they had already received applications that reached their capacity to lend the $10 billion that they were allocated. Now, Bank of America was not given nearly as much money simply because of their past practices, right? And some of the things they've done in the past. So if you're a Wells Fargo customer, and again, I received an email on this one this morning from somebody, go to their website and they say they're no longer taking applications. That is in fact true. So as a result, if you're a Wells Fargo customer and you haven't applied yet, what you need to do is get on the phone and start calling other banks in town, find out which one of them will work with you. Right now, some of them may say, no, we're not going to. We're working strictly with our customers. Others will say, look, if you open up an account with us, we'll absolutely work with you. And I've seen both of those even in our community. So if you're a Wells Fargo customer and haven't applied, get on the phone today, don't wait, and find a bank that you can start working with. One of the things over the weekend, American Bankers Association, this was the first weekend of the program was there, estimated that the SBA was approving approximately $1 billion in loans under this program per hour. Right now, that's going to slow down. It has slowed down, but that was just the original foray. So that's a couple of those items that are there at this point in time. So, Paul, let's hit some of these questions real quick.
Question from Todd. Should we put employees on unemployment until our PPP application is approved?
Should you put current employees on unemployment? Yeah, again, if you can resist that, I would resist it. Again, it may have a little bit of an impact as far as how much gets forgiven on the backside. But again, they want to see that through that 8-week period that you maintained headcount. So, yeah, again, they're not going to get nearly as much money at that point. Yeah, again, if there's any way that you can keep them on the payroll, I'd recommend doing that.
Question from Eric. Which entity audits the PPP wages post-loan?
Which entity audits the PPP numbers post-loan? So that, again, is that last item on the application where you had the initial. That's basically saying that your bank is going to verify the numbers that are there, that you're giving them. And they're also stating that the bank will verify at that point your reports as far as how much was in place, right? What you actually spent. So it's going to be your local banker that you're going to work with on both accounts.
From Sean on the EIDL program, how would you recommend estimating monies needed to borrow? Go for the max, 200K or less?
Well, here's what I would do. I would go for the max because, again, even what they're going to do is, again, they will forward the $10,000 grant on that the EIDL program, and then they're going to go back and still work at processing the loan. And they'll come back to you and tell you, because some of the information you're entering in there with your company is what were your sales, what were your cost of goods sold. That's what they're basing that loan amount that you qualify for on. And so at that point, go for everything you can. They're going to look at that and they may come back and say you qualify for, you know, $175,000. Right? You don't have to take it. Right? You can say, well, I really only want 100,000. Right? So I go for what, you know, apply for the max and see what they come back with. Because remember, regardless of what they come back with on an approval, or even if they come back on a denial, you still get the $10,000 and that doesn't have to be repaid.
From Veronica, can the employee stay on unemployment until we get approved for the loan?
Okay, so that comes back to similar to the question that I think Todd asked. Again, if they're on there now, again, you can absolutely keep them there, is my understanding. Right. So again, I'd be talking with your banker at this point while you're doing it as well. Talk to your CPA. But my understanding is you can keep them there, but prep them, get them ready to know that you are going to bring them back as of, you know, as soon as you can. And at that point, they'll be receiving full wages as opposed to just the unemployment side of it.
Question from Tom, does the PPP program apply to sole-owned proprietorships with no employees?
So does the PPP program apply to sole proprietors with no employees? Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why this is critical, right? Somebody asked me yesterday, I got a friend who owns a gym and he's shut down at this point, you know, and it's just him, right? Does that qualify? That's what part of what the program was designed for, is to make sure that you keep getting paid and you keep getting paid at the wages, right? That average monthly income that you were earning last year to keep those wheels turning, right? So absolutely it applies to you. In that situation, I would definitely be applying for this thing.
Question from Nancy, does it cover?
I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but again, on that case, sole proprietors and independent contractors, you can start applying as of this coming Friday the 10th. Right, so start today, right? Don't wait till Friday to call your bank. Call them today and make sure that they've got what's going on. Again, in my particular case, my bank had our entire application and all supporting information that they thought they needed on Thursday morning, even though they couldn't start applying until Friday. Now, they came back Friday morning. They came back and said, okay, last minute change. We need a new application. Fill this thing out and get it back to us. And they were already moving on it. So call them today. Don't wait on that. I'm sorry, Paul.
Nope, and that sort of echoes in on Rebecca's question. Will there be any money left if the sole proprietorships can't apply until April 10th?
Yeah, so will there be any money left? So first off, yeah, again, that is the other thing, is the program is available on a first come, first served basis. And when the money is gone, it was what, $346 billion in there. Last night, I watched the president's briefing, and he requested another $250 billion again yesterday to add specifically into the small business element of this program that would affect you and I. And so again, I can't definitively answer that question, but I can tell you if you don't apply, the answer is you don't get anything, right? So walk through the process and still take advantage of that piece of the puzzle.
A couple of questions on what the funds can be used for. One is, and I'll combine them here.
Okay.
Can it be used for items like workers' comp, insurance? Can it be used to pay down a loan on a PC or equipment? Can it be used to pay for fuel on trucks?
Whew, okay, that's all encompassing, right? So again, it can be used for rent, for all payroll wages. So workman's comp insurance is not included in your payroll. So it can't be used on that. Fuel for the trucks cannot be used on that. It's rent, utilities, interest on your mortgage, if you own your building, or interest on old debt that was incurred prior to February 15th. Those are the only items that can be used on, and those items can't exceed 25% of the total forgiven amount.
As a business owner, what if you did not make up to $100,000 before the disaster? Does it affect the amount you can get?
No, not at all. In fact, in your particular case, it won't impact you at all, right? Because you put in, if I as a business owner made $75,000 last year, then I include all of my wages in the calculation. It's those people that actually took out more than $100,000 last year that start to get limited on what they can take out, right? Remember, it's just a total of what were your total. So let's say you're sole proprietor, right? It was just you and your earnings. And actually, so sole proprietor, you're just pulling money out of the company. They're looking at what was the net profit of the company last year, right? So they're going to take up to $100,000 at that point times 2.5 to get your multiplier for your loan amount.
What if an employee is fired during the program?
What if okay, that's a great question, right? There may be a reason why I need to let somebody go. The intent of the program is not to make you stop running your business. The intent of the program is to make sure that that we still maintain what we're doing in the company, right? And so you can absolutely, if you need to fire somebody for or let them go for whatever reason, you can absolutely do that. But then they want you to see that you're going to try and replace that individual. Right? If you're not going to replace the individual, they might look at that as a headcount reduction, and you may have to make an argument. Worst case scenario is that would just slightly limit what you end up being forgiven on your loan, and the rest is a 1%, so it still doesn't kill you that much.
Under the PPP program, employees are supposed to be paid based on 40 hours. What if they were working overtime prior to the shutdown?
Basically, if so it comes back to they want to maintain the 40-hour work week is my understanding. Right now, if they're working more than 40 hours now and they were working 40 hours, more than 40 before, keep doing what you're doing. Right? Then at that point, your average monthly payroll was higher before. It's going to be higher now. And all that happens is it basically increases the amount that could be forgiven up to the loan amount. So again, whatever dollars you get there, keep doing what you're doing. And worst case scenarios, they'll forgive 100% of what you borrowed, and your payroll may have been a little bit higher than that. You still got all of it forgiven, and they're covering that 8 weeks worth of payroll.
What if we did not apply for the EIDL but would like to, and we have applied for the PPP loans? Can we still apply? Basically, can you still apply for the EIDL?
Okay, so if you haven't applied for, you applied for PPP and you haven't applied for EIDL, can you still go back and do that? So the answer to that question is yes, but you may want to, at that point, go back and talk to your lending institution, your banker, to find out, okay, are there any other things that we need to take into account here at that point in time? You have up until quite a while to apply for that disaster relief loan. And so at that point, you may even want to just hang tight right now, until the PPP is, and that might be the advice they give you. Go with what they come back to you with, but then, wait until the PPP is approved and you have those funds, and then go back and apply for EIDL. It may just change that, but be talking to your bank on that one.
Where do I send the application?
Where do you send the application? And that's a great question, because quite frankly, I sent out that application on Friday. We had a couple of contractors who misunderstood, filled it out, and sent it back to me, right? That goes back to your local bank, right? Who are you banking with? Be talking to them. Now, in some cases, the banks are going, look, we're not up to speed yet. We don't have the details. Get on the phone, find another bank at that point. Don't wait until they are ready to go, right? There's more banks in town. Be checking out others. The longer you take to apply, the further down you get into the queue. And again, when the money's gone, the money's gone. So I'd be applying for it right away.
I'm a home-based business and claim 30% of my home to business. Will any of my mortgage interest or utilities be covered?
Ooh, okay. So that's a question. Again, I'm not an accountant. You definitely want to be talking to your banker or your accountant if you've got one on that question, because I can't answer that question. That's, as they say, above my pay grade.
Can you make employees use vacation until PPP is approved?
Can you make them take vacation? I guess you can make employees take vacation at any time of year. The question is, what's that going to do to the team at that point? Yeah. So yeah, I guess you could, right, and pay that out. I don't see any, and I haven't seen anything in any of the documentation that would prevent that from happening. As you're still paying them. Again, the question was going to be are they going to stick with you at that point after the fact? They should. It's tough times. Everybody's having to cut back. But as far as I'm aware, I've not seen anything to say that you can't do that.
Can you cover one more time when the unforgiven portion of the PPP converts to a loan?
Okay. So when does the uncovered portion of the PPP convert to that 1% interest loan? That's going to happen again at the end of the 8 weeks. You need to be able to provide to your lender the proof that this information was what that money was used for. And so if all of it was used, then it'll be forgiven. If not, then at the end of the 8-week period, or effective the end of the 8-week period, is when they would basically convert that to the loan and start charging the 1% interest rate on that. Or let me add to that, right? The end of the 8 weeks, you don't get the information to them. Then they're just going to convert it all to a loan and say, okay, you're out of luck. You didn't get it to us, right? So if it's your responsibility, and that's why they set it up as a loan. It's your responsibility as the borrower to provide that information to your lender at the end of the 8-week period, right? So at the end of the 8 weeks, don't dawdle at that one. Have your information ready to go. That's why I gave you the list of what you're going to need to prove that documentation. Pull that together. Keep it as you go through the 8 weeks.
Couple of questions that are similar, dealing with the unemployment situation where they are now getting the $600 on top of the regular benefit. What's better, to let them stay on unemployment, or should we participate in the PPP program?
You know, that's an interesting question, right? Because if they get again, if they go on unemployment, not only do they get unemployment, they also get an extra $600 bump on top of that as well. That is true. Right, so there is, depending on what your employee is being paid and how many hours they're working, they might earn more on going on unemployment. But remember that if you reduce headcount, then that does impact how much of your PPP loan would be forgiven. Right, so you have to make that decision as a business owner. As far as what makes more sense for your individual situation. Right? So again, yes, they might benefit on a weekly payment level, but it's going to impact your company at that point as well. So you have to make that decision personally.
And our last question, what if you hire someone during the 8-week period?
First off, if you hire somebody during the 8-week period, man, I'm so happy for you. I can't tell you how thrilled I am, because that means you're growing in the middle of all this thing, right? And so that's a huge plus. And so if that happens, great. The only difference is you're only going to have forgiven, your loan amount was based off of the previous payroll, and the forgiven amount is only going to go up to that maximum 100% of that. So bottom line is you still have that full loan amount that you applied for in your average payroll. That's what's going to be forgiven. It might not cover 100% of your payroll at that point. Okay. Whew, man, I love those questions. And those are some of the same questions that we've been getting emailed or called into us as we went through this thing. So a couple of things just to remember, right? And I'm going to wrap this. I know we're a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I felt it was important to answer those questions. Yeah, I did a podcast with somebody last week, and I brought out 5 key points, right? Number one, it's business leaders, right? Again, you're made for this. This is your role. This is what you do. Right? And if there's 5 things that I can tell you or suggest to you, number one, just breathe, right? Some of us haven't stopped to take a breath since this whole thing started, right? Breathe a little bit. And the second one, don't make decisions based in fear, right? Again, it's not that we're afraid of the dark, it's afraid of what we don't know is out there, right? And we don't know, but it's starting to get just a little bit of view to it. Hopefully today brought a little bit of clarity for you. You know, don't make decisions out of fear. When you do that, bad things tend to happen for your company, right? Take care of your team. If you've got any fear, right, you know the fear that they have. Some of these guys, the employees don't want to go into your customer's home for fear that they'll get sick, right? So take care of them, not only physically. Do they have all the PPP equipment that they can get, right? Yeah, again, so if you can't get it, then what can you do in the meantime? Right? There's been some contractors who have done some really creative things to take care of their team physically, right? Not only making the masks that they can wear because they can't get their hands on them, right? Some of them have done a nice job, and they're actually even logoing the masks that they're wearing. But others, they'll go through and again, we stay, no contact, maintain the 6-foot distance. Along with that, they've actually gone through and ordered pens, for example, that are individually wrapped. And so when it comes time to signing a work order or anything like that, they either forego that, or they basically just peel back the wrap. The customer can take the pen And when after they sign, it's theirs, you don't take it back, right? So you maintain that separation at that point. But it goes more than taking care of them physically. Take care of them mentally. Again, they've got some fear along this. You cannot possibly over-communicate during a time like this. As the leader of the company, you're setting the pace, right? So you can't stop and ask them, hey, how are you doing? Right? How's your family doing? Right? Do you have any issues? Right? Find out that, because again, you got to show them that you care. And then, so again, take care of them physically, mentally, spiritually. What are the things that you can do for your individual team? Know your numbers. There is not a time ever that's been more important than this, to know your numbers. What is it costing you to open your doors right now? Or if you choose not to open them, what's it costing you? I'm going to give you a tool here in just a minute. I put together a tool that'll help you project cash flow. I'll give you a link to that as well. And then look for other opportunities to do things a little bit differently. We've got a Window World franchise here in our community. And it's interesting because over the last week, right, they've been, their advertising has taken they pivoted really, really well. And they're going, look, at a time like this, this is not the time for us to be coming into your home to talk about those old worn out windows, right? It's not the time. However, in the middle of it, they're saying this will pass, but in the middle of it, your windows aren't getting any better. If you'd like to take advantage of some of that time that you've got on your hands right now, we can meet with you virtually. We'll do a Zoom communication. We'll do a FaceTime communication. We can still look at your windows and get you a pretty good idea of some pricing. And you know what? We'll take care of it now. We'll put you on the list to come and install it later in the summer when everything, right? So they've pivoted very well, right? And they're going to benefit as a result of that. So think about those couple of items. And then this very last graphic, and then we're going to end it here, is this one. Again, you have to, at a time like this, you have to be micromanaging your cash flow, right? It's critically important. And so if you go out to this link, right? So grandylink.com/cash flow, I've created this spreadsheet where you can go out and download this, and it will help you to project your cash flow for the next 4 months. Yes, there's a little bit of crystal ball stuff there. I get that, right? But it'll help you doing that. There's a second tab that says, okay, this is what I think is going to happen, but what happens if my installations go down by 30%? What's going to happen to cash flow then, right? Having the answer and knowing it will help you. It puts you in a much better position of not having a clue whatsoever. So, Paul, you said there was one more question that came in. We'll hit this one, then we're going to draw to a close.
Last question. Can we make them come back even if they don't want to leave unemployment?
Can you make them come back? Can you make them come back even if they don't want to leave unemployment? The question there is, again, if you're offering them a job, one of the things about unemployment is they can't find a job. You're offering them their job, right? So that may ultimately then impact, it would benefit you if they refuse to come back because you tried to bring them back. Right. Second thing is it may ultimately impact a long-term relationship with them going down the road. So you're going to kind of have to wade through that one with your banker, but let them know, hey, I've tried to bring them back. They refuse to come back, that kind of thing.
And I think part of that question is you might bring them back even to send them home and pay them to be at home. Right. But you get them off unemployment. Exactly. And here's the other thing as contractors, if I'm paying them, then I'm going to do what I can. So that means, quite frankly, at that point, if I can, I'm going to be doing boatloads of online training with them. I'm going to take advantage of that time that they're not going out doing work, and I'm going to bring them in and we'll do training in-house. If we can do that, we'll have them sign up and do online training that we specify for them. I'm going to do as much of that as I can during this downtime right now because I'm paying them and I don't have a job for you to go out on. So I'm going to leverage that time as much as we possibly can. All right. With that, guys, we went a little bit longer, but again, I felt it important to answer these questions. If there's anything that we can do to help you, by all means, reach out to us at Bill Kennard at GrandyAssociates.com. I will send you an email coming up here in the next little bit with a link to the recording, as well as the application again, the spreadsheet that I showed you, and the calculator here as well. So that'll be coming your way. Stay safe. We will get through this. Take care of yourself.